Welcome back to Become a Bat. This is episode 10 already.
Jeez.
I'm your host, Tom.
And I'm Mike.
And in this episode, we are going to go over Detective Comics number 44 and the second story in Batman number 2.
Almost done with Batman number 2.
We're about halfway.
Yeah.
Before we continue, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast hosting platform and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us a ton with that algorithm.
Yeah, or reach out to us on Twitter. What's the Twitter?
The Twitter is Become a Bat Pod.
Nice. Detective Comics number 44, The Land Behind the Light. Art by Bob Kane, Jerry Robinson, and George Russos. Written by Bill Finger. The cover of this one is pretty awesome. I mean, when are they not? So far, we haven't really run across any duds yet.
And you know what? I don't know when the last time, or if we're gonna get any more covers that aren't Batman.
That's true. They're probably all Batman at this point.
Yeah.
They're probably going to start heavily featuring the Rogues Gallery as they're introduced too.
Yeah.
But this one's just Batman and Robin. This is your typical like noir style cover. You know, there's Batman in the foreground, throwing his cape over his face like Dracula, and he's kind of hiding behind a chimney. And then you've got Robin swinging through the air, about to like kick some thug in the face who's firing off his gun. And the bullet from the gun is hitting the chimney right next to Batman. So Batman's on guard.
And Robin's swinging in front of a full moon.
Yeah, always the full moons in these comics, especially on the covers.
Before we get to the synopsis, do you remember what our guesses were for what the story was about last time?
Not really. What did we guess?
You guessed that it would take place in like a factory where they make oversized objects.
Oh, yeah.
And for whatever reason, I guessed aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was just based on the first page of the issue.
In a weird way, we were kind of both right.
We were
both wrong. Well, I mean, there's elements of both because we were thinking it's going to be like a full-blown Silver Age Batman story.
Yeah, like,
you know, like
a little bit too early, but
yeah.
So
yeah.
All right, I guess you'll find out how we were wrong.
This is a weird issue. It's going to be weird reading the synopsis.
Yeah.
But bear with me. Dick Grayson is sitting in front of a fireplace reading a book while he waits for Batman to come home. That's right, Batman. The clock strikes midnight and Dick yawns. He convinces himself to stay up a little bit later and keep waiting for Bruce/Batman. An hour or so later, Bruce finally arrives dressed as Batman. Dick asks him what took him so long. He tells him that he was following up on a lead, and that lead took him straight to the doorstep of one Dr. Marco. He then tells Dick that he came back to get him so that they can pay a visit to Marco together and find out just what kind of crazy he is. Dick suits up as Robin, the boy wonder, and they set off into the night on foot. So I guess Dr. Marco lives close to them.
It gives you an impression that we're supposed to know Dr. Marco, but
yeah.
No, it's his first time.
Yeah. There is an eerily dense fog hanging in the air that makes it hard to see, but they make their way to Dr. Marco's house eventually. They arrive at 13 Bleak Street. That's the address to the house.
It's a pretty good address.
It's a good address. The house is really creepy looking, and honestly, it kind of reminds me of the House of Secrets. It's very creepy looking. Robin even says that the street name and the house number seem very appropriate. The dynamic duo ascends a long staircase to the front door. Batman turns the doorknob, and the door opens. It's unlocked. They step inside, wary of what might lie ahead. Suddenly, a scraggly-looking older man, and by scraggly I mean he's very scraggly, he has a big bushy beard, appears and welcomes them in. He says he was expecting them, and he explains that he saw Batman curiously snooping around outside earlier that day. Batman tells him that he's curious, all right. Curious to find out what kind of mad scheme he's up to. The scraggly man says that he's not up to any scheme, unless you call discovering the fourth dimension a scheme. What?
The fourth dimension.
Yeah. He brings them into a vaulted laboratory and turns on some kind of machine that generates a veil of light. He informs Batman that the fourth dimension exists beyond this veil of light, and then walks through the light and disappears. Batman and Robin follow suit. When they reach the other side, they find themselves in a strange, alien-looking place. As soon as they arrive, they are swooped up off their feet by two huge hands. These hands belong to a towering orange giant. At first, the giant refers to them as the small ones, accusing them of trespassing on the king's property. He holds them up to his face, yelling at them, and tells them that the punishment for such a thing is death. But while looking closely at them, he realizes that they are actually much larger than these small ones that he mistook them for. The giant remarks how strange this is, then heads off towards a dungeon to lock them up for their crimes. As he walks, Batman and Robin yell back and forth to each other. Robin asks if they shrank, to which Batman replies, "No, we're in a world of giants." Obviously.
It's all relative.
Yeah. Once the giant arrives at the dungeon, he throws them in and locks the door. He chuckles about how they will never escape from their prison, or their inevitable deaths. He was wrong, though. Since this is a giant prison, it has a giant door with giant spaces between the bars. Batman realizes this immediately and uses his batarang and rope to hook onto the bars. Then he and Robin scale the door like the side of a tall building and make their way out.
They must not have heard about the Batman.
Right?
Yeah. Not in the fourth dimension.
Why don't they have a small prison for these small people that apparently get thrown in prison all the time?
Maybe they can't build tiny things.
Maybe their hands are too big. They can't use little
Yeah.
tools to build small things.
They don't have the motor skills.
Good point. Once on the other side of the door, they use the rope to slide down to the ground. Then they have to descend a huge flight of stairs where each step is taller than they are. They end up in a long hallway with only 2 visible doors. Batman and Robin split up and go for separate doors to investigate. But on his way to his door, Robin finds himself pursued and then attacked by a giant house cat the size of a tiger. Before the cat can land a pounce on Robin, he rolls out of the way. Batman appears out of nowhere and leaps onto the giant cat's back. It tries to buck him off, but he manages to get his footing, and slowly he plants his feet and forces the cat up onto his hind legs, where he gets it into a full Nelson. With all of his muscles shaking from strain, he eventually manages to subdue the cat. It loses consciousness and goes limp. At first I thought he killed the cat. I thought he broke its neck.
Yeah, I couldn't tell, but yeah, I guess he did just
Puts it in like a chokehold,
put him to
cuts
sleep,
off
yeah.
its air supply. Robin jokes about knowing how a mouse feels now. Batman reminds him that everything here is larger than them, and then suddenly they are swooped up again into the same big pair of hands. Gorl, that's Gorl, the big orange giant who keeps manhandling Batman and Robin, takes them to his king to show him the slightly larger, small ones who were trying to escape. The king tells Gorl that the small ones must die. Batman acts quickly, going for a giant pepper shaker. He throws pepper in the king's eye. Then Gorl tries to smash Batman, but instead he ends up hitting the end of a giant spoon that's on the table. Batman anticipates this somehow and stands on the other end of the spoon. As soon as Gorl's hand hits it, he uses it like a springboard and rockets himself up into the air where he can land a kick right on Gorl's nose. The rest of the giant guards come after them, but Batman and Robin outsmart and outmaneuver them in creative comedic ways. One of them, Batman literally kicks his butt into a vase. Another, Robin slingshots in the face, and the third one they take down with lassos together. After they finish humiliating the guards, Batman throws a fruit into the king's face, and it splatters all over him. Then he and Robin grab a fork and a knife off the table, a giant fork and a giant knife, tuck them into their belts like swords, and jump out the closest window, where they safely glide down to the ground with the help of a giant umbrella.
I did like that touch.
That was kind of cool. Once on the ground, the dynamic duo run as fast as they can to escape, but it's not fast enough because a huge bird swoops out of nowhere from the sky and takes off with Robin. Lucky for Batman, there are 2 young giants playing with a model plane that just so happens to have fully functional controls and run on gasoline. So he jumps in the plane and takes off after the bird. In a bizarre battle, the plane overtakes the bird. Batman sees an opening and chucks his giant knife straight into the bird. It drops Robin, but Batman, being the ace pilot that he is, manages to dive the plane in time and catch him. Not long after, we see Batman and Robin walking in a swamp. Batman comments about how they ran out of gas, of course. Then, out of nowhere, again, a giant crocodile attacks them. Batman takes the giant fork from Robin and hurls it directly into the crocodile's eyeball. It roars in pain and flees. Batman and Robin wade downstream till they come across a tiny little town. They see Dr. Marco there, talking with a bunch of little people. They catch up with him, and he tells them that this is the village of the small ones, and explains to them that the world's inhabitants are either really small or really big, and there's nothing in between. Batman talks with what seems to be the king of the small ones. I'm basing that purely on the fact that he's wearing a crown, didn't actually say. And together they come up with a plan. The next morning, when the giants attack, the small ones fight them off as best as they can with their makeshift catapults and cannons. They finally start gaining the upper hand when a squadron of tiny little planes zoom out of the sky and start dropping insect bombs. Literal bombs full of stinging insects that swarm the giants and sting the crap out of them. The giants flee in terror, but one giant does not. It's Goral. He spies Robin and takes off after him. He catches up with him and picks him up. "I've got you now," he says with a sinister look. Robin cries out, and then he wakes up in a chair, to Bruce shaking his shoulder. That's right, kids. The entire story was a frickin' dream. Robin was just reading a book called Giants and Dwarves. The end.
Yeah, it was a dream. Did you
Such
think
an abrupt ending, too.
did it get you? Did you think it was a dream?
At first, no, but I was trying to like wrap my head around why this would be happening, and I was like, there's gotta be some weird twist going on. I don't know why I didn't immediately think it was a dream.
See, I didn't think it was a dream at all. It totally got me.
Yeah.
And I think it's because 80 years after Batman being a thing, and we know at some point, he goes on wacky adventures,
Yeah.
fighting aliens, fighting, magical beasts
Yeah.
and all this. At some point, I just didn't consider that, oh yeah, they might just do a dream sequence.
I know. I mean, I literally had just finished reading another random issue of Batman that's way further down the road for us, where they're on an alien planet and then Robin gets killed by aliens. So I was like, oh, we're here already?
I mean, Robin at one point dates an alien,
Yeah, that's true.
and Bruce's best friend is an alien. So
This is true.
yeah,
They love aliens.
that's just why I didn't even consider that this was just going to be a dream episode.
Yeah, this is what I wrote for my thoughts. I wrote, this one is just straight up ridiculous. It was fun because of how different it was from everything else so far, but it felt really repetitive because they just, like, things just kept coming out of nowhere and grabbing them.
Yeah, I got the feeling, thinking about it, that maybe Bob Kane wanted to just draw Batman fighting, different creatures. He's like,
Yeah,
this is my opportunity to make Batman fight a cat and
and a
alligator.
crocodile, and a
Crocodile.
falcon, and
Yeah.
giants.
Yeah, and
Yes.
they probably had a lot of fun with him at the Bat Gyro, issues
Yeah.
back. So why not have him get back into another one?
There were some fun parts. I mean, I would say the whole thing was fun.
Yeah,
It didn't feel like the other Batman stories so far.
yeah,
I loved him using the giant silverware. I thought that was hilarious. Throwing the giant knife at the bird and
Mm-hmm.
throwing the giant fork in the crocodile's eye. And also, I love that they like tuck it into their belts like their swords.
yeah.
Thought that was really funny.
It didn't feel like it was an issue of Detective Comics thus far.
Yeah.
It felt much more generic at the time. Like if like Disney or Fleischer were making Mickey Mouse or Popeye cartoons, they just kind of plopped them into just a random storybook, story. Like this is basically a little bit like Jack and the Beanstalk,
Yeah, I
Gulliver's Travels.
definitely got both of those vibes from it. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's what it is, just a mishmash of those two.
That was the only way they could justify putting Batman and Robin in it. Dick was just reading and
Yeah.
fell asleep.
I'm looking forward to weird stuff like this, but
Mhm.
I'm just hoping that when we get to the weird stuff like this, that it's written better than this one particularly.
I want less that like Bill Finger just kind of bored and just doing a filler issue, and I want more like the writers and the artists took a bunch of LSD and just came up with the weirdest shit.
Yeah, like where they're taking it seriously regardless of how cheesy and ridiculous it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that era of Batman.
yeah. This is definitely the weakest issue we've read so far.
It's weak story and like writing wise, but it's not as weak as like those really racist ones, because those I
Yeah.
just don't even want to read.
Yeah, those are just bad. This is just boring.
This is
bad.
like boring bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Z movie bad. Anyways, what panels did you pick? I'll go over mine
Okay.
after you go over yours.
So the two that I chose, the first one is the one where they're going over to Dr. Marco's. It's very foggy outside, and all we see are just Batman and Robin silhouettes, and they're standing in front or behind a lamp,
Yeah.
a candlelit lamp.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's an actual candle.
Yeah. So it's just really cool looking.
Yeah,
Nice panel.
kind of reminds me of Gotham by Gaslight a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my second panel was the one with the dwarves. The general one is he's telling them the couple to fire a cannon, so they're firing it. But the general, he looks kind of bored. He's reading the funny papers as he's telling them to fire. You're middle of
Yeah.
war, and it's all fate of your people, and
Just
reading the comics.
reading the comics. So I put 2. Well, I mean, I guess it's more than 2 technically. So the first one I put in here was that individual panel where it's Batman and Robin grabbing the giant fork and knife off the table. I thought it was funny because they're grabbing giant silverware to stick in their belts,
Yeah.
but also because like these silverware are like the proportions don't match up. If those giants were holding the silverware, they'd be like comically small in their hands. Because they've got to be the right size for Batman and Robin to put in their belts.
The proportions I noticed change from
Yeah.
time to time, because there's in one panel where Batman's walking around, alongside one of the dwarves,
Yeah.
and the dwarf is like goes up to his waist, and then
Yeah.
a couple panels later, he's holding the dwarf up in his one hand,
I know.
and he's like about the size of a pineapple or something.
The other one that I picked, it's 4 panels, but it's a sequential action sequence, and it's the giant house cat one. So I just like everything about this sequence. It's funny. Like there's Robin being attacked by it, and then Batman pounces on it like head first, and he says, "Not so fast, pussy." And then you have Batman like just wrestling this thing, and then he says, "Now's my cue to sing 'Hold That Tiger,'" which must be a famous song from back then, or he just made that crap up.
Let me see. Let me see. I listen to a lot of old timey jazz, and I've never heard "Hold That Tiger."
Yeah. Oh, and then I love the one where he's like,
That is a song.
really? We'll have to listen to it later. Curious.
"Hold That Tiger," LSU Tigers fight song.
It's a university fight song then.
I don't know if it existed in 1940, but
Yeah, well, whatever. And then the third panel, because there's 4, is him putting the house cat into full Nelson. Batman looks freaking ripped in this panel. And like the vibration lines coming off of them while he's trying to subdue it.
yeah.
You can really feel it.
Yeah, I like the shading on the cat too.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And then the last panel is just Robin going, "Now I know what a mouse feels like. The size of that cat." And then Batman says, "Don't forget, we're in a land of giants, so that everything is large compared to us." Yeah, no duh, Batman.
All right. Any final thoughts on this issue?
I mean, it's what it is.
Yeah.
If you're reading along with us, feel free to try to read it. But if you get bored, you're not missing anything special.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we are going to go into Batman number 2, story number 2. What was it called?
It is called Wolf, the Crime Master.
The Crime Master. All right. Be there. We are back, and we're going to do Batman number 2, story 2, Wolf, the Crime Master.
Dude, I just thought of something.
Mm.
You could have said Holy Cats in the beginning of this one, too, because it's a giant cat.
The art was by Bob Kane, Jerry Robinson, and George Russos, written by Bill Finger. A museum owner named Cyrus Craig is about to go home for the day, and he stops by to have a friendly chat with the museum custodian, Adam Lamb. Lamb is a small, timid man. Lamb is reading a mystery novel called The Crime Master. Lamb tells Craig that the stories excite him, and Craig has a laugh at the idea of Lamb acting like a criminal master. Craig leaves, and Lamb spends the next few hours finishing up his reading. On his way out, he trips and falls down the stairs, suffering a major blow to his head. He's dazed, and he sees 2 things as he tries to get up: a painting of a bat and his crime novel. A nearby clock chimes for 12 midnight, and Lamb falls unconscious. He wakes up, confused, only remembering the fall. The next night, Lamb leaves the museum when he hears the chimes of midnight. Just then, he stops and begins a strange metamorphosis. He pulls off his glasses, straightens his posture, and starts acting like an entirely different man. He even starts snarling like a wild animal. He finds a man walking by and beats him to death with his cane. A few hours later, Lamb wakes up in his own bed, convinced that killing the man was just a nightmare. This becomes a nightly occurrence. Clock chimes 12 and Lamb becomes Wolf.
I think I'd be a little concerned if I was having nightmares every night about murdering people.
Yeah, I think so too, but sometimes a cigar is just a cigar and a nightmare is just a nightmare.
True, but there's something to said about recurring nightmares.
Yeah.
Like it's trying to tell you something.
Wolf forms a small gang which expands into a larger one, and every morning, Lamb wakes up, confused by his dreams. One night, Batman and Robin stumble upon Wolf's gang raiding a warehouse. They jump in to dispatch the gangsters. Wolf walks by and whacks Robin on the head with his cane. He throws the unconscious boy into the path of an oncoming truck. Batman swoops in just in time to save his life. Wolf and the gang drive off in the roadster. Batman notices a strange dent in the back of the car and commits it to memory.
How many times has Robin been hit in the head with something already? He's got to have some damage going on. Like 3 at least recently.
I think Dick probably has a very thick head.
Actually, I think Batman says something about his skull being thick.
Yeah, well, something about the hair. The hair.
Oh, yeah.
Padding.
He says your hair gives you some cushioning.
Yeah, which, okay, sure. All right. So Lamb is still confused as what's going on. And one day he sees Wolf's suit hanging in his closet and decides he needs to get to the bottom of this. He decides to stake out his own closet. But 12 o'clock strikes and Wolf takes over. The next day, Bruce Wayne pays a visit to Craig's museum. There, Craig introduces Bruce to Lamb. Bruce leaves the museum and he notices a familiar roadster nearby. So, Batman and Robin come back and spot some of the men from the previous night's warehouse heist hassling a man. Robin also identifies the guy who clubbed him. They rush towards the gangsters. Batman gets shot on the shoulder and he falls into the ocean. Robin goes nuts and starts to beat the shit out of the gangsters. Just then, Batman emerges from the water and throws out a glass pellet from his belt, which emits a black cloud of smoke, surrounding everyone.
Something new.
Robin aids Batman, and they escape. They arrive at Bruce's lab, and Dick performs surgery on Bruce's shoulder to remove the bullet.
It was brutal.
Later on, Bruce is at his library reading a copy of The Crime Master. He realizes that all of the Wolf's crimes come directly from this book. He then remembers that Lamb was reading the same book at the museum. Realizing that Craig's life is in danger, they suit up and they rush to the museum. Craig and Lamb are hard at work at the museum doing some taxidermy work.
Yeah.
The chimes of midnight strike when suddenly Lamb experiences his nightly transformation. Wolf picks up a knife and lunges towards Craig. Robin swoops in through a window and saves Craig. They have a tussle and then Batman grabs Wolf's arm. This is the first time that Wolf sees Batman, and the very sight of Batman puts him in a daze. He suddenly remembers the painting of the bat. Batman uses this opportunity to sucker punch Wolf, which causes him to stumble down the stairs once more. His head hits the ground hard enough to break his neck. Wolf's face transforms back into Lamb's. He realizes what's been going on and in his dying words confesses to Batman about his nightly deeds. Lamb closes his eyes and dies. Craig shakes Batman's hand, thanking him for saving his life. The end.
So, a couple things. One, you didn't tell them how he became the wolf because it's ridiculous. And also, it's not a painting of a bat. I wrote originally that it was a painting of a bat too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a taxidermy bat mounted on a piece of canvas.
That makes sort of way more sense.
Yeah.
Doing taxidermy.
And it's shaped exactly like Batman's symbol too.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny, but do you
Okay.
want me to tell him or do you want me to tell him what happens? It's ridiculous.
Please refresh me.
So Wolf is reading his book and then he stays up really late till like midnight or so.
Yeah.
Right. And then he stops reading the book, puts it down and starts walking. And what happens is he walks into like a wall and then he like trips and falls down the stairs. And so he like hits a bunch of stairs on the way down. And then when he gets up from his fall down the stairs, he realizes he had like knocked something off the wall. So he like gets up, he's in a daze and he's feeling all messed up. Then he looks over at the thing he knocked off the wall and it's a bat. And then he looks over to his other direction and there's a copy of the Crime Master book. And then he passes out.
Okay.
And so he's supposed to be like brainwashed in that split second of seeing a bat and then seeing the book and then boom, he's a villain.
Okay. I will, full disclosure, I was a couple beers in watching WrestleMania when I did the synopsis and read the issue. So
Yeah.
I just kind of assumed that he just knocked it down on his way, his tumble down, just both of them.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like
That
he
makes
had
more
like
sense.
trauma to the head, and then
Yeah.
that trauma and seeing the book cover and seeing the bat was like boom, it locked
Mm.
it in. And then when he loses it and becomes normal again, it's the trauma of getting punched in the head by Batman and falling back down the stairs and seeing the bat that
Yeah,
knocks him back
that
out.
was obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, so it like happens in reverse.
Yeah.
But something interesting here. Remember in the issue where they had the flowers with the women's faces on it?
Yeah.
So Wolf the Crime Master is called Wolf the Crime Master because there's a phrase called the Hour of the Wolf. And the Hour of the Wolf is defined as the time between midnight and dawn when most people die, when sleep is the deepest, and when nightmares are most palatable.
That's
pretty
really interesting.
Awesome.
Huh.
So he should have been a recurring villain. I think it would be hilarious if they found a way to bring him back.
Yeah.
And then just like once a year, you just bring back Wolf the Crime Master, except they killed him.
Yeah.
But just find a different way for him to hit his head.
That brings me to some of my thoughts, which I felt really bad for Lamb. So you earlier have compared Batman to Scooby-Doo, which is the way
many times.
they unmasked the villain and all that. But you
Yeah.
know what Hanna-Barbera cartoon this one reminds me of?
What?
The Flintstones.
Oh, yeah.
Because Fred is always getting hit in the head, and he gets a new personality after that. And usually, he gets hit in the head again,
Yeah.
and
And it goes away.
it goes away.
Good point.
So much so that they did a whole episode of Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, parodying this. Bowling ball lands on Fred's head, and he becomes like a Tony Soprano style gangster.
Nice.
They even redo the whole Sopranos theme song. I think there was more potential if they didn't kill him off, which also, if he broke his neck, I mean, you can survive a broken neck. Usually, if you die from it, it's instantaneous, right?
Maybe he just gave up on life because he realized he was a murderer.
Yeah, maybe they didn't have ways of saving people with broken necks back then, so he
Maybe.
just gave up.
Or maybe it was just severely broken.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Regardless, I mean, it was a way of doing a confession.
There's going to be a lot of weird things that come back up in these issues, but you brought this up with a previous villain. You brought it up with the Napoleon guy
Mhm.
about how he reminded you of Maxie Zeus,
Yeah.
Batman the Animated Series. The Crime Master here also reminds me of that. He's very much in the same line as Maxie Zeus,
hmm
Mad Hatter, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and even Solomon Grundy, who's based off of a famous poem.
Hmm.
They're all characters who have some weird like psychosis that makes them think that they're a fictional character.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's a recurring theme in Batman comics.
I had to try not to say Adam Lambert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good name, though. I mean, Adam Lamb.
Yeah.
Like, it flows really well. Also, did you notice that both the stories in this episode have to do with books having really weird effects on people?
You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a theme.
it is.
Also, what did you think about Robin performing surgery?
Yeah, I thought it was cool, like, the fact that he could actually do it, but I was also like, Batman, you're literally asking this, like, 13-year-old to pull a bullet out of you? Like,
I don't even think he's 13 at this point. But yeah, it's still his kid. Like,
I mean, look, it's Robin, okay? Like, he's getting guns pointed at him regularly.
Yeah.
He's almost dying on a regular basis.
Yeah.
He fought off, like, 8 dudes all by himself. I think if anyone could pull a bullet out of you, it's probably him.
yeah,
It's still a lot to ask.
it's
a kid.
still, yeah, it's a lot to ask. And also, it's just like, you get used to seeing the kid fight criminals.
Yeah.
It's another thing to see him like hold a knife up in his hand and
Yeah.
and do surgery.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, Alfred will probably do this stuff later.
I picked up Batman Golden Age by Les Daniels, and just it's a book about Batman, his golden age, the origins of where, the nonfiction origins of where he comes from. Alfred won't show up until 1943.
Yeah.
So we
Well,
got,
and even when he shows up in like weird different incarnations, kind of like how Batman changes a little bit as time goes on.
well, they made him less of a surrogate father, and he was more just kind of like a bumbling would-be detective.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's
Yeah.
like the he's like the Sherlock Holmes sidekick,
He's like kind of like a bumbling. He wants to be Sherlock Holmes, but
Yeah.
he's kind of like nowhere near as good as Batman.
Maybe that's kind of what they were going for with that
Also, he
concept.
wasn't with the Wayne family. He just kind of like gets a job at the house.
It's kind of a weird retcon when you think about it. Like there is no butler, then there is a butler, but he's not a family friend, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he's your family friend who's been there forever.
Also, I think Julie's gone forever now.
Already?
I think so.
Damn.
Yep.
So the last issue she was in, we haven't even.
Clayface.
Yeah. Damn.
Yep.
Wow.
So Batman's a bachelor again. Anyway,
You got any random thoughts? I got a couple more thoughts.
Yeah,
I'll
what-
share, and then we can get into the photos. So I talked to you about this earlier, but is it just me or does Adam Lamb look like Peter Lorre? Like he's based on Peter Lorre, and so therefore when I was reading it, I was like hearing his voice in my head, which seemed really appropriate.
I didn't think about that till you pointed it out. You know what I think though? I mean, I can see it, but usually, like, I always think of like the Looney Tunes caricature of him, and they always give him like those purple eyelids.
Oh yeah, and he talks like that.
Yeah, I can. If I knew that ahead of time, I would definitely put his voice in my head while reading the panels.
Yeah. I love his whole criminal origin story. I think it's great.
Yeah,
And actually, I didn't even think about looking this up, but is The Crime Master an actual novel?
I don't think. I think it's something they made up for this.
Man, that's too bad because I would read it if it
Yeah.
was.
Actually, you know what? Let's look it up.
It's really ingenious too. Like, yeah, that he didn't last very long and all that, but the fact that his name is Wolf, the Crime Master, and he turns into Wolf during the hour of the wolf, like they put a little bit of thought into this.
His name was Lamb too. So
Yeah, Lamb turns into Wolf,
yeah,
but he's definitely inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like that's for sure. You could
yeah.
nobody could deny that.
Another theme of duality.
Yep. Which is reused for Two-Face later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually wrote, "Oh man, I feel dumb. I just realized that his name is Lamb and he becomes Wolf." Like 3/4 of the way through the book or through the story. And then there's a panel where Robin is beating up Wolf's thugs and he says, "You guys need more spinach." It's definitely a Popeye reference. There's
Yeah.
Popeye comics at the time, so
Popeye, yeah, he predates Batman by a
Yeah.
good like 15 years.
Popeye was huge too. Batman getting shot. That was crazy.
This is the first serious injury he's had in
Yeah.
good few issues.
People have been shooting at him, but it always hits the bulletproof vest. This is the first time it's gone past the vest and actually like gone through him.
Someone points a gun and he usually just chucks something at them before they can shoot.
Yeah, or like runs up to them and decks them in the face before they
Yeah.
can pull the trigger. But he actually gets shot. I thought that was crazy. I wasn't expecting it. And then Robin's reaction, it actually says Robin goes berserk. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's actually one of my panels that I love here.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about
Yeah.
that too when we're going over your panel. But I actually, like, I didn't think Batman was going to die, obviously, but
Yeah.
Robin clearly thought he was dead.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we've seen Robin
Yeah.
really see that aspect of the job.
I think this issue has the best art so far, hands down.
Mm.
It's like, and not just because the coloring is better, because we're reading like the recolored edition, but like everything about this issue is drawn so much better. Like
Yeah.
the action is done better, the posing of the characters is done better, the
Yeah.
capes, the way the capes fly and flutter in the wind, like that
Mhm.
panel that I picked, love it.
Yeah.
So
So actually
good.
talk about the panel.
So the panel, one of the panels that I picked, actually both the panels that I picked, it's like a sequential action sequence again. So the first part of the panel, you have Batman and Robin, and they're like running down the dock, and their capes are fluttering in the wind in this like really cool kind of style, like where they're like almost like parachutes, like the way
Yeah,
they're like
actually-
puffing up in the back.
Kind of look like boobs.
They do kind of look like boobs. But and then obviously you have the full moon, and then they're chasing towards him, and then like these thugs are like, "They're back again." It just screams Batman to me. And I know that pose has been aped. Like they took it straight out of this panel and made it the cover of another issue.
Yeah, or it kind of reminds me of the Batman and Robin running towards
Yeah.
the screen.
I used to actually have a Hallmark statue that was that exact pose of the two of them. The next one I picked, it's just Batman elbowing / uppercutting. I guess he's uppercutting the guy in the head. And just like every other time he hits a dude in the head, he drops his gun and his hat falls off, which we should start counting those because there's so many of them so far. And it says, "A smashing uppercut to the gunman's jaw." And then Batman's like, "Drop it or I'll drop you," which is such a good line.
Yeah,
But what really sells me on this one is the fact that his uppercut is like blocking most of his face. So you don't see Batman's entire face. You just see like the dark black surrounding his eye and his ear, and that's it. And he looks really menacing.
yeah. I wonder if the scaled gauntlet dragged up across the face as he
I'd like to think so.
went up. The first panel that I chose is it's where Lamb is transforming in front of Craig, and I just love the way Lamb's face looks when he transforms. His
Yeah.
eyes go in different directions.
They like bug out.
Yeah, they bug out, and he just has this like funny grin. I don't know, it's amusing to me.
And then the other guy's like, "Lamb, your face, it's changing." If someone's face changes completely in front of you, you should probably run.
The next panel I chose is the one where Robin is freaking out after Batman got shot and fell into the ocean.
Yeah. Is there a tear coming down his cheek?
There is a tear going down his
Just
cheek.
one single teardrop. That's
He's-
all that Robin sheds.
He's freaking out because I think this is the most serious injury he's ever seen Batman. I mean, he thinks he's dead.
There's like motion lines. He's actually whipping his head around and he's like, "Batman." He's like screaming his
Yeah.
name.
You murderers! You killed him! You killed him! As he's lifting one of the guys over his head, and
Yeah.
then he's kicking the other guy straight in the the lower plexus.
That's such a good panel because
Yeah.
at first I thought he was kicking him in the balls, but he's definitely kicking him like in the solar plexus.
Yeah.
But he's kicking him in the solar plexus. He's dropping his gun. His hat's flying off, and his elbow is smacking another guy in the face whose hat's flying off.
Oh,
Look at double hats
and
flying
hit
off.
the other guy, in the face.
Yeah, is the guy in the back dropping a gun too?
If he is, it's off. It's like
Man,
below the panel.
that'd be funny if all
Yeah.
three of them, their hats were flying off and they were all dropping guns.
Just at this point, Robin is in a total blind rage.
He's a total badass right there.
He probably would have killed these guys but for the fact that
The next panel. Yeah.
Batman jumps out of the ocean. Is really cool looking. It's the background turns, that cool Gotham red night sky. There's like the fog cascading across the full moon.
I almost picked this panel too.
Yeah, they're all shocked. Like, Batman's alive. Everybody is shocked that Batman's still alive.
I like that they don't say he's still alive. They say he's back from the grave.
He's reborn.
He can be back from the grave because he never went to the grave. He just fell into the ocean. But
Yeah,
I get it.
I keep thinking in my head as I imagine Batman shooting out of the ocean is in Castlevania the Merman popping up out of the water.
I actually thought of Friday the 13th when Jason Voorhees shoots out of the lake and lands on the boat. But when I read this, I didn't envision him initially jumping out. Or like, obviously he has to jump out. But I kind of envisioned it more like Robin's beating the crap out of these guys and they're so distracted. And then all of a sudden they turn around and he's just standing there already, just soaking wet, dripping. And they're just like, "Huh, where did he come from?"
It is kind of ambiguous. I can see the lines kind of indicating like an upward motion, but
I thought that was water just trickling up.
Yeah,
his
it could
body.
be the water trickling down too. Batman's standing and like on the dock, so he's clutching one of like the little wooden stop posts
to help hold himself up.
Yeah. So, but
do you know his gauntlet? The scallops are webbed again.
Oh yeah.
Wow, I didn't notice that.
Yep. So that's that. All right. Any final thoughts on the issue?
I thoroughly enjoyed this issue.
Yeah.
Especially Robin freaking out. As much as I love Batman right now, I love him most when he's like decking people in the face and spouting these one-liners. Robin is blowing me away like every issue. I didn't remember Robin being so cool when I read these old issues originally.
Robin is a great addition.
Yeah, he really is. Like, he's not just some sidekick. Like, he is almost like an equal counterpart to Batman in a lot of these comics.
So we have 2 stories next week. The Case of the Laughing Death and The Case of the Clubfoot Murderers.
Both really good titles.
So I've already read ahead, so I know about the Clubfoot Murderers, but based on like the page you saw, what do you think?
That's hard to say, but I'm imagining that someone is killing people and they have a clubfoot. Not that they're killing somebody with a clubfoot. That would be a little dark.
That's to be seen. And then we took a quick look at Detective 45, and we guessed it was a Joker, and it is indeed a Joker issue.
We were like, it must be the Joker. And I was like, if it's the Joker, he's probably on the splash page. Yep, there he is.
On the splash page, he's playing the violin.
Yeah.
It looks like it'll be his first time in Detective outside of Batman. That should be fun. All right. Until next time, and please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast catcher of your choice.
Yeah, we're basically on everything.
And then leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else they ask for reviews. Help us out. Become a Bat Pod at Twitter. Thank you for listening.
Later.
Goodbye.